Hi, this is Nathan Tintle. In this Learning Goal video, we will talk about how to apply the 3S strategy when using the MAD statistic. We will use the coming to a stop example from the Introduction to Statistical Investigations textbook to talk about this learning goal. Remember the 3S strategy. First, compute a statistic. In this case, we'll use the MAD statistic. Then we need to simulate the null hypothesis of no association. Finally, we evaluate the strength of evidence by looking at the observed value of the MAD statistic versus simulated MAD statistics. We will now use the multiple proportions applet to demonstrate the application of the 3S strategy to this data set. I've pasted the data into the data box and clicked the Use Data button. I now see a bar chart showing me the proportion of cars that stopped when they were the single car, the lead car, or in the following position. I also see that the observed value of the MAD statistic is 0.086. So the first S of the 3S strategy is done. We've computed our statistic 0.086. Now I can click Show Shuffle Options. This is going to allow us to do shuffles simulating the null hypothesis. Now the process for doing this simulation is a straightforward extension of what we've seen in other sections. Specifically, you can take playing cards that are red or black. Red could indicate the car stops, black indicates the car doesn't stop. Shuffle those cards, deal them into 3 stacks for each of the 3 types of cars, single, lead, and following. Find the proportions, take the differences, compute the MAD statistic, and do that many, many times. The applet can do that for us very quickly. 1,000 shuffles of the MAD statistics are shown here in this graph. We can then ask, how often do we get values greater than 0.086? Because that is the value of the MAD statistic. That happens about 8.8% of the time. Our p-value then is about 8.8%. This is moderate evidence against the null hypothesis of no association. So we can conclude we have moderate evidence of an association between the type of car and whether or not it stops at the stop sign. A few words of caution. Notice that even though our alternative hypothesis was looking for any association, we only looked at the upper tail of the simulated null distribution. This is because the MAD statistic, because we've taken the absolute value, that is, we've made all the differences positive, is by its very nature two-sided. It's looking for any differences. So actually, this gets back at the idea that the simulated null distribution is right skewed, always positive. By only looking the upper tail now, even though it's only sort of one tail of the null distribution, it is like a two-sided test, which is looking for any association. That's a little bit tricky. Take a couple minutes and think about that one. Couple of other words of caution. What do we do now if we have evidence against the null hypothesis? We're going to do some sort of a follow-up analysis. Another Learning Goal video will talk about that. If you don't have evidence against the null hypothesis, you're done. We don't have evidence of an association. If you do have evidence of an association, go try to find out where that association is. We'll talk about that in other Learning Goal videos. Finally, remember the simulation of no association, very much like what we've seen before.